Hey guys, sorry I'm out today, but we're going to continue on. So the first thing is we're going to try, let's do a little do now problem. So let's try factoring. So we're just going to factor a problem. And let's do a lead coefficient. So 12x squared plus 11x plus 2. So why don't you factor this? If you're stuck, just remember it's going to be, we're going to use the method where we're going to multiply the front and the back. So we multiply the front and back, we get 24. We break that down into the factors, and it's going to be 8 and 3. And then what we do is we reduce. So the 8, 4 goes into 8 2 times, 4 goes in here 3 times. So that is really 3x plus 2. And then we do the other side. 3 goes in here once, 4. So this side is 4x plus 1. And that is how we factor. Before we get going too far, let's review what was from last week. So here was the review. The review was we did first degree trig equations. And an example of that would be something like 2 secant x equals 2 plus secant x. And all we did was you want to get the trig function to one side and everything else to the other. So I'm going to move the secant this way. So I get 1 secant x equals 2. We don't like working with secant, so we're going to change that to 1 over cosine equals 2. And we don't like the cosine downstairs, so we're going to flip it back over. So if we flip this over, it'll be cosine x, but we flip the other side, we get equals to 1/2. And then if you recall, what we did was we said, well, listen, it's a positive cosine equals is a positive half. So that tells me the neighborhood that we're going to be in. So positive cosine means we're in quadrants 1 and 4. So you grab your calculator, you punch in. So if I want to solve for x, it's second cosine, inverse cosine, 1/2. You punch that in, and you get 60. But that's the reference angle. That's the reference angle. We take the 60, we put it on our little chart here, our ASTC, our positives and negatives, and we're going to find each one of these angles. So the first since we're in quadrant 1, the reference angle is an answer. And then we go all the way around to this one, and the other answer is 300. Those are the two answers for this question. That was last week. So let's move on and continue with this week. So in the book, we're in 13.2, and it's called Using Factoring to Solve Trig Equations. So let's get started. Let's try one that's not too crazy. Let's see. Here's a question. This is out of your textbook. So this is we'll just call this problem 1. Um, tangent squared minus 3 tangent plus 2 equals 0. Well, we factored trig equations before, but if you forgot, this is exactly the same thing as if they said x squared minus 3x plus 2. So you'd factor this as x minus 2, x minus 1, and then you would split it apart, and you get x equals 2, x equals 1. Well, we're going to do the exact same thing, though, with tangent. So let's come back over here. And so we're going to split it apart. And if you don't like doing it with the trig function, you can use x's, and at the end, do a substitution back. So this is going to be tangent theta, tan theta, minus 2 minus 1. You do it exactly the same as regular factoring. Split it apart. Tan theta minus 2 equals 0. That's why tangent of theta equals 2. Tan theta minus 1 equals 0. Tan theta equals 1. Now I have two separate parts, and each part is just like last week's problems. So now we're just going to we'll start over here, either one, doesn't matter, and we're going to use factor, and it depends on what the directions. So for this problem, it said from 0 to 360. All right, you got to read the directions and see what they say. And I'm going to round to the nearest tenth for this problem. So that's what it works. All right, so let's do this side first. So theta is second tan 1. Punch that in your calculator and get an answer. And hopefully you come up with 45 degrees, which is the reference angle. So for this one, 45 is a reference. Tangent's positive in the first and third. So you need to get the angles. And hopefully, so first quadrant is 45, and the third quadrant question would be, is 225. Let's try this guy. Second tan of 2. So second tangent 2, 63.43. I'm just going to use the nearest tenth, so 63.4. This is a positive 2, just like the 1. So that's the first quadrant and the third. So 63.4, 63.4. So I get, so since first quadrant, I keep my reference. That is one of the answers. And the other one would be 243.4. These are my 4 answers to this question. This problem had four answers. Let's try it again. All right, so let's try another one. So question 2. 2 sine squared theta plus sine theta minus 1 equals 0. Now this was an exact value problem from 0 to 360. And so we're going to do this by factoring. So see what you get. So I come up with sine of theta plus 1 and 2 sine theta minus 1. That's what I get. So, and then this is set to 0. and we're going to split it apart, and we'll solve each side. So see what you get. Hopefully we have -1 and +1/2. Each one of these you're going to do is 2 separate problems. Now remember, the negative, I don't use the negative in the calculator. The negative tells me the quadrants. So, and this positive is quadrants also. The negative, though, is something we got to remember we did last week when we had the -1. It's a special angle. So crunch this out and get the answer. So -1, since it's a 1, it's the quadrantal angle. It's on 270. So if you punch it in your calculator, remember it would say -90. And you have to know to make that into 270. And then this side we get 30. I dropped in first and second for sine. I get 30, 150. So this problem had 3 answers this time. 30, 150, 270. Let's try it again. Okay, so I think we're up to question 3. And so it'd be 3 tan squared minus 5 tangent minus a 2 equals 0. So this has a lead coefficient, so you're going to factor it like we factored the do now. So go ahead, factor it, please. So I come up with tan theta minus 2 equals times 3 tan theta plus 1. The whole thing equals 0. You're going to split it apart, and it's going to be 2 separate problems now. So it would be tan theta equals 2, and tan theta equals, subtract 1 divided by 3, -1/3. Punch them in, get the angles, drop them in the right quadrants, and get your answers. This one will have 4 answers. We'll do this to the nearest tenth. So I came up with four answers. Two for the positive 2, 63.4 and 243.4. Now the negative one, now this is where negative 1/3. Don't type in the negative. I get 18.4 as the reference. I drop it in quadrants 2 and 4. So I got 161.6 and 341.6. Those are my four answers. Let's try another one. Okay, this is a good one. So this is 2 sine theta cosine theta plus sine theta. And at first you might be like, well, there's no square, so I can't factor it. And you're thinking of the wrong type of factoring. This is a greatest common factor. It's a GCF problem. So take a look at it and see, what do you see in both terms. Hopefully the sign jumps out at you. So we're going to take out the sign and then fill in the rest. Divide by sine, cancel out. You get 2 cosine. Do not forget 1 in the back. That's the part people forget, so be careful. And now we're going to just split this apart, and we're going to do it just like earlier. Now remember though, this is equal to 0, and this one would be subtract 1 divided by 2, so it's negative 1/2. 0 is going to be one of your quadrantal angles, and if the directions, it depends on what the directions say. So this is going to be 0 to 360. So just be careful. So get your answers. Go. So for the cosine, I got 60 as a reference. I drop it in quadrants 2 and 3 because it's negative. And so I got, for this problem, I got 120 and 240. So I got 120 and 240 for the right-hand side. Now what about this left-hand side? All right, well, let's take a look. If the direction said this, put a theta up here. If the directions say this, then my answers for the left would only be 0 and 180, because you're not allowed to equal the 360. So that's what the answer would say. But sometimes the directions might put an equal sign under it, right? They might have an equal sign here. And if I put the equal sign there, then it means you're allowed to use 360. So then I would include the 360 also. So if this is, so put this down, that would be all 5 answers this time. So you got to read the directions. They tell you what the domain is. Let's try it again. All right, last question, and then you just try some problems on your own. So here we go. So it'll say, there's a tricky one now. So 2 sine theta minus 1 equals 3 over sine theta. Alright, this is like the trickiest one. Alright, so when I look at this, what I see is two fractions like this. And what we're going to do is, I don't want bottom, so either I can just multiply by the common denominator, or some of you might be better off thinking as a cross multiply problem. So when we cross multiply, we get 2 sine squared minus sine theta equals 3. We set this to 0. We get 2 sine squared minus sine minus 3 equals 0. Factor it out, see what you get. I get 2 sine minus 3 and sine plus 1. Draw the line down the middle, solve each side. And then use the calculator and find the angles. There's a problem though. When you punch this in, it doesn't work. We talked about this last week. So for sines and cosines, it has to be between -1 and 1. All right, for either one of these, sines and cosines have to be between -1 and 1. So this side here, there's no solution. No solution. This side, though, does have an answer. -1, that's our little friend, 270. So now, what's the answer? So I'm going to make a list of my answers. All right, 270, and you do not circle no solution, because there is a solution, 270. The answer is just 270. Now, if both of these sides were no solution, then you mark down no solution, no solution, or just no solution. But if there is one answer, don't circle no solution also. All right, I'm just going to give you some problems. Try them out. This is your homework. And so get going now. You should have about 20 minutes left. So here we go. So your homework is on page 530. And it's questions 4 through 20 even. So here's question 4. 3 tan squared equals 1. Question 6. 2 sine squared minus 1 equals 0. Number 8. 2 sine cosine plus cosine. All of these are from 0 to 360. And you should get nice numbers, nice answers for these. If some of you guys are looking at this first one, you're like, oh man, I don't know how to do this. I'll give you a hint. Divide by 3 and then do square root. Remember, the calculator doesn't care if you put second tan radical 1 over 3. All right? Just type it in the calculator. It doesn't matter. All right, some more. These are to the nearest tenth. And these down at the bottom are nearest 10th radians. So you're going to convert to degrees, and then you're going to multiply by pi over 180. That's it. Hopefully this was okay. If you get stuck, you want to go back, you can feel free to go back to the e-board at your own time. And that's it. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.